picked up some produce, and we're going to head back now. We're going to make an apple pie that's fit for Georgia. Apple pie. Hey, so we're out here in Georgia, and we were hoping to catch some of the peaches. We got to pick some peaches prior to this hunt that we're going to do. We missed the season, and I don't have a whole bunch of time, otherwise I would have gone and out apple picking today. But instead we've come to one of the local side of the road apple barn stores, and this one's super cool little store. We're going to give you all the details in a minute in case you're out in this part of Georgia. I'm going to pick up a couple of these Mutsus, and we're going to make a fresh apple pie for people we're hanging out with here. Alright, so just watch along. We're going to show you how we do it. Alright, I just got back to the cabin I'm staying in Georgia. We're going on the hunt tomorrow morning. I just took 10 of these apples, these Mutsu apples. Great for cooking, perfect for apple pies. It's a hybrid apple, super tasty, still has crunch and body, doesn't get super soggy, but maintains body enough where you're getting not necessarily a crunch, but you're getting the body of the piece of apple rather than mush. A lot of the times if you pick the wrong apples, they can get mushy. We want to still have the body of the piece of apple, but we want it soft and palatable once we caramelize it. So here we are, we're going to Reka apple pie. Alright, so I'm back in the kitchen now, and I want to go through some ingredients with you. So if you're watching at home, you can see this, and you can work along with me, this apple pie yourself. So I have 9, should be 10. Here it is. I've got 10 apples, they're Mutsu apples. I have 4 tablespoons of flour, half a cup of butter, cubed, half a cup of brown sugar. I have a full cup of maple syrup. You can substitute a different syrup if you prefer.
Okay.
And in this spice bowl here, I have 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I have all of these here ready to go so we can assemble this dish. I'm about to start slicing, peeling, and dicing up these apples. Let's get cracking. I'm continuing to peel these apples, and you can see I'm slicing them into small little sections, taking out the cores. Now, I didn't have my home kitchen here, so I was working with equipment that I don't always normally work with. There's a lot of things I didn't have. I've got a great apple peeler. Maybe we'll do another apple pie back at the house. And I have this amazing little apple peeler that cores it and peels it all at the same time, and then it does a spiral cut. So you can get these amazing little apple sections for a pie. But for right now, I just conventionally used a chopping board and a knife, cored it, peeled it, and pulled it into little slices. That was an arduous job. So let's load all these cut apples into this big bowl, and I'm going to start mixing everything in. So here comes our little spice bowl. That's our nutmeg, cinnamon, and salt. Going to get that all poured over. Now let's add our brown sugar, reserving a little bit. And let's add the syrup now. I'm going to use a portion of it and reserve a small amount, about half of it. And now let's just start to gently fold over all of that sugar and spice and syrup into the apples. We want those to soak up as much of that before we start to cook them as possible. Now usually I'd use like more of a deep dish bowl, but right here I was working with the serving dish. So when you're out in the cabin in the woods, you got to use what you got to use, right? You got to make it happen. So we're making it happen here. And I'm telling you, if you could just smell this right now, this is amazing. All those spices and that freshly cut apple smell, just absolutely gorgeous. Usually I have my own pie dishes, and at home I have all my own baking equipment, so usually I would be making my own pie dough, but today, because I'm out in the middle of nowhere in Georgia and I'm in a cabin and I don't have a bunch of equipment, I'm just using box pastry. So let's just get these loaded into these pie dishes. You just open it up, peel it out, and then you just want to pinch a little piece just like you would with a normal piece of dough, and just kind of fold and crease it over each other around the sides, so we're binding well to the sides and we have secured a full dish of pie crust pastry. And here we're now repeating that for number 2, moving around the pie with our fingers, and just completely getting that all nice and leveled out. Now
that's what I call
apple pie. These apples have soaked for just long enough now where we can get them ready to throw in a hot skillet. And I've taken some of that butter and I've thrown it in the pan because the butter is actually part of the recipe. It's not just a cooking medium. And so I'm getting all of that butter. I've actually got 2 pans. I don't have a big enough skillet here. So I have 2 pans and I've just split that butter up between those pans. And I'm getting that butter to a melted state where it's just starting to simmer before it starts browning. And I'm loading up half of that apple and all of that gorgeous syrupy, brown, sugary, spicy juice. Ooh. Into the pans and starting to bring the heat up to a simmer. You can see it just bubbling there in all of its gorgeousness. Very delicately and gently stirring. And like I said before, these apples they do hold their crunchy solid body. So they don't turn to mush like a lot of other apples will. Once you have the apples starting to soften, take half of that flour portion that we had. You want to take 2 tablespoons of flour in each skillet. So if you're doing this in one big skillet, that's your 4 tablespoons of flour. And just sprinkle it over the top of the apples and then just very delicately just start to move the apples round. And the flour is going to start to drink up and absorb and soak up a lot of the real syrupy juice. We don't want to have a whole lot of wet syrup in the pie, at least at first, because as the apples cook down further in the pie, they're going to emit more liquid. So we want to soak up as much of it as possible so that when we cut the pie at the end, we have a solid body and not just like a syrupy liquid that cuts out when we cut the pie. So this flour is going to act as a binding agent to kind of bind all of this together and to solidify that gravy so we don't lose any of that beautiful flavor that we've added into the pie. Right, plating up time. Let's take our beautifully caramelized apples. They're nice and thick, and now I let them rest for a few minutes. I let them cool down just a little bit. And I'm going to start loading them into each of the pie dishes. Doesn't that just look amazing? Can you smell the spices and that beautiful buttery, cinnamon, sugary, syrupy cooked apple smell? There's just something about that that's just real special. I remember when I was a little boy, my grandparents, we would go and stay the night at my grandparents' house. It was like a cool little treat thing that we would do, and they would often cook stewed apples or caramelized apples to go over our oatmeal in the mornings. And it was just like, I just looked forward to that. There was just something really special and comforting about that to me. That was just, really, really a highlight of something that I remember about my grandparents. And so when I cook apples like this, I just think about my grandparents and the amazing memories I had. Now, little pro tip, and aside from the pro tip with the flour, here's a little pro tip. Once you've got the pie in there, take a little bit more brown sugar, a little bit more cinnamon, and some of that syrup and load it into the pie. Just pour it over the top of those pie fillings and just gently stir them in to the pie filling, all the apples. Now let's take our pie crust, put it back over the top. Now the goal is we want to just very delicately push that down over the pie filling and then start to pinch the edge of the pie crust, the top pie crust, into the pastry of the lower crust. And that will just create an even seal. Lastly, we want to take our knife, and you can see here I've just cut like a very small little V, and you take the V of the pastry and fold it back, and that just creates a little vent so that as the pie is cooking, it doesn't over pressurize inside the casing of the pastry, and it just allows it to vent. It allows it to breathe with that increase of heat, and all the juices starting to flow. So we're good now. But there's one last small little tip that I want to go over with you. So now for the last little tip that I'm going to show you, I am going to pour a little bit of table salt over the top of the pie crust and then add a little bit of sprinkling of brown sugar. Not a lot, just grab a pinch and just sprinkle it over the top of the pie crust, just like that. And as you do that, once it starts to bake in the oven, it's just going to melt and caramelize, and you get that salty, sweet crust on the top of the pie. Little pro tip, just try it next time you make one of these pies. It just gives it a nice little kick. Now let's throw it in the oven, 375 degrees. We're gonna leave it in there for approximately 30 minutes, 45 at the most, depending on your oven. Look at that. In this case, it was about 45 minutes. And I just got the pie crust beautifully starting to brown and caramelize. You can see the salt and the sugar has just kind of melted and caramelized up on top of the pie. So you get these amazing little crunchy little flavor explosions on the top of the crust. So let's get ready to plate up. You got to test this stuff. You got to bring it down to that moment of truth where you're going to put it into a plate, throw a little bit of ice cream or whipped cream with it, and check your work. There we go, just pulling it out of the pie dish. So let's see how we did. Now let's have a look here. That's super good.
Yeah.
It's not too sweet.
Right.
It's got good apple flavor. Got some nice spices, undertones.
Nice spice, yep.
That's good. It's good apple pie. Get out and get baking.
That is top notch.
There you go. Thank you.
From a Georgia, Southern Georgia redneck, that is top notch apple pie right there.
Thank you, Andrew. This is awesome.
If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for other amazing videos coming up, including a few videos from this Georgia trip where I went out and harvested and gathered other things and brought them together in amazing meals. Thanks for watching again. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next video.